I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, my reflection clouded by the lingering steam, my fingertips grazing my lips as if I could wipe away the memory of what had happened. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out the distant sound of my husband moving around downstairs. The kiss was still there, burned into my skin, imprinted on my thoughts, impossible to ignore no matter how hard I tried. It shouldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened. And yet it did. I gripped the edge of the sink, forcing in a steady breath, trying to anchor myself in reality, in the life I had built, in the version of myself that wasn't capable of making reckless, irreversible mistakes. But the truth pressed in from all sides, suffocating, undeniable. My body hadn't pulled away. Dinner at my sister-in-law's house had been routine at first, predictable, warm, filled with familiar laughter and conversations that felt like echoes of 1,000 other nights just like it. I had played my role seamlessly, smiling when expected, responding at the right moments, nodding along as my husband and his brother debated business, real estate and investments as if the world hinged on their opinions. I had almost convinced myself that I was present, that I was there in that moment until he walked in. Javier. The boy I had once known, now a man I could barely recognize. He wasn't the awkward teenager who used to shuffle into family gatherings, overshadowed by his father. He was confident, composed, completely unaware, or perhaps too aware, of the way his presence shifted the energy in the room. His shoulders broader, his stance relaxed, his expression unreadable. But it was his eyes that caught me off guard. Sharp, knowing, as if he could see straight through me before I even had a chance to put my walls up. He greeted everyone with casual ease, his smile effortless, his voice steady. But when he reached me, something flickered, something almost imperceptible, but I felt it. His hug was polite, appropriate, the same as the ones he gave the others, yet his hand lingered on my back for just a second too long. His voice dipped when he murmured, "It's been a long time," and when he pulled away, his gaze didn't waver, didn't release me as quickly as it should have. My pulse jumped, an unspoken warning sounding deep in my chest, but I pushed it down, forced a small, practiced smile, ignored the heat creeping along my skin. Throughout dinner I tried to focus on anything but him. My husband was next to me, close enough to touch, engaged in conversation, oblivious. The room buzzed with warmth, with voices overlapping, with the comfortable weight of routine. But beneath the table, a fleeting moment unraveled everything. Javier's foot brushed against mine, not forcefully, not intentionally, not anything that should have mattered. And yet I didn't pull away. Neither did he. The contact barely lasted a second, but it sent a slow humming awareness through me, something dangerous, something I shouldn't have allowed. By the time the night wound down, I had convinced myself that it was nothing. That whatever lingered in the air between us was in my imagination. But as we stood near the door waiting for my husband to finish his conversation, Javier moved closer. Too close. The sounds of the others faded into the background, drowned out by the rapid beat of my own heart. His voice was quiet, low, meant only for me. "You feel it too, don't you?" My breath caught. I should have laughed. I should have turned away. But I didn't. Then he did something unexpected. He reached up, slow and deliberate, tucking a loose strand of my hair behind my ear. His fingertips barely grazed my skin, but I felt it everywhere. I should have stopped him. I should have stepped back. Instead, I stood there as his lips pressed against mine, slow, careful, an unspoken question between us. I didn't push him away. And that was the moment I knew, this wasn't over. I wake up before the alarm, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my husband's arm draped over my waist, his breathing slow and steady, unaware of the storm raging inside me. The room is quiet, dim, the early morning light barely slipping through the curtains, but everything feels different, foreign, like I've woken up in someone else's life. I shift slightly, careful not to wake him, but the movement only makes it worse, because my body isn't reacting to his warmth the way it should. I don't feel comforted. I feel trapped. My throat tightens as I squeeze my eyes shut, trying to push away the images flashing through my mind, the memory of last night pressing against my skin, burning where it shouldn't. I tell myself it was nothing. A mistake. A lapse in judgment. I tell myself that if I bury it deep enough, it will disappear, that I go through the motions like any other morning, slipping out of bed, pulling on my robe, heading downstairs to make coffee. The scent fills the kitchen, familiar and grounding, but it does nothing to settle me. I force myself to focus on small, ordinary things. spooning sugar into my cup, flipping through my phone, pretending my hands aren't shaking. But my mind refuses to cooperate. It keeps rewinding to that moment, to the way my breath had caught when Javier's fingers brushed my skin, to the way his lips had met mine, slow and deliberate, to the way I had let him. I shake my head, trying to rid myself of it, trying to remind myself who I am, where I am, but the feeling lingers, sticky and undeniable. By the time my husband comes downstairs, dressed and ready for work, I've managed to compose myself, at least on the surface. He kisses my cheek in passing, murmurs something about a meeting, asks if I need anything from the store. The usual. Routine. Predictable. I smile, nod, answer in a voice that doesn't sound like mine, and he doesn't notice a thing. He never does. The thought should comfort me. Instead, it makes my stomach twist. The day drags in slow motion. I run errands, respond to emails, do everything I can to drown out the noise in my head, but it's useless. He's there. In every empty moment, in every heartbeat that feels too fast, in every stolen glance at my phone when I shouldn't be looking. I keep telling myself it's over, that it never should have begun, but then my phone vibrates and everything inside me stops. One message. Just my name. Nothing more. But it's enough. I swallow hard, my fingers tightening around the device, my pulse hammering in my throat. I shouldn't respond. I should delete it. But instead I stare at it too long, feeling something dangerous unravel inside me. And then, as if the universe is laughing at me, I see him. Standing by his car not far from where I am, leaning against the door like he has all the time in the world. Our eyes meet. He smirks, easy, confident, like he knows exactly what he's doing. Like this isn't an accident at all. My breath catches, my skin prickles, heat spreading through me even though I don't want it to. He tilts his head as if waiting, as if daring me to acknowledge what we both already know. And in that moment I realize the truth. I've already started playing this game. I tell myself it's just another day, just another stop in my routine, just another place where nothing should happen, where I can breathe, reset, regain control. But the moment I push open the glass door of the cafe, I know I've made a mistake. He's here. Sitting near the window, one arm draped casually over the back of his chair, fingers tapping idly against the table, his gaze already locked onto me as if he knew I was coming. The air inside is warm, thick with the scent of roasted coffee and fresh pastries, but suddenly, it feels suffocating. My pulse skips. My grip tightens on my purse strap. I should turn around. I should pretend I didn't see him. But it's already too late. He smirks, his head tilting just slightly in amusement, and before I can even decide what to do, he's already speaking. "What are the chances?" he says, voice easy, teasing, like he's in on some joke that I don't understand. Or is this fate? I laugh, but it comes out wrong. Too quick, too forced, a little unsteady. "I think you're giving fate too much credit," I say, stepping toward the counter, keeping my focus on the menu even though I already know what I'll order. Anything to keep my eyes off him, to keep my hands from shaking. I feel him watching me, studying every movement, every breath, every hesitation. "You seem nervous," he muses, and the amusement in his tone makes something tighten in my chest. I turn my head just enough to meet his gaze, ignoring the way my stomach twists at the way he's looking at me, like he sees something no one else does. "I'm not nervous," I say too fast, and his smirk deepens. "No." He leans back, slow, deliberate. "Then sit with me." I should say no. I should shake my head, tell him I'm in a hurry, grab my coffee and leave. But my body betrays me, my feet moving before my mind can stop them, and suddenly I'm lowering myself into the chair across from him. The table is small, too small, forcing our knees almost to touch, and I feel the heat of him like a current pressing against my skin. "So," he says, fingers tapping lazily against the table, eyes never leaving mine. "Are we going to talk about it?" My throat goes dry. "About what?" I ask, feigning innocence as if I don't know exactly what he means. He huffs a quiet laugh, shaking his head like he almost pities me for pretending. "You know what?" I force a sip of my coffee, ignoring the way my hands feel unsteady around the cup. "It was nothing," I say, even though the words taste like a lie. His silence stretches between us, heavy, suffocating. Then, just as I think he's going to let it go, he leans forward, just enough that his knee presses lightly against mine beneath the table, just enough that his fingers trail absently along the rim of his cup before sliding toward me. "Tell me something, Laura," he murmurs, his voice quiet, just for me. "Are you afraid of me?" The words shouldn't make my breath hitch. They shouldn't make my pulse quicken. But they do. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head trying to keep my expression even. That's ridiculous. He tilts his head slightly, watching me like he's trying to unravel something. Then why do you look like you want to run? I don't have an answer. And I don't have time to come up with one before his hand brushes against mine, his fingers skimming my skin, slow, unhurried, deliberate. I should pull away. I should. But I don't. I let it linger, let the warmth seep into me, let the moment stretch too long, too dangerous, too real. He watches me waiting, and I know this is a test. I know that whatever happens next is up to me. My breath stutters. My fingers twitch. And then just as slowly I pull back. I should go, I whisper, my voice barely audible, but he doesn't look disappointed. He looks amused. Of course, he says easily, leaning back again, but his eyes tell me everything. That night, lying in bed next to my husband, staring at the ceiling, I can still feel it. The warmth of his touch. The weight of his gaze. The way my heart had stuttered in my chest at the sound of his voice. I tell myself it was nothing. I tell myself I imagined it. But deep down I know the truth. I've already crossed the line. The music hums low in the background, the sound of glasses clinking, laughter threading through the air, conversations overlapping in a blur of voices I'm not really listening to. I should be relaxed, should be enjoying myself, should be anywhere but inside my own head. But my pulse is a steady drumbeat in my ears, my skin prickling with awareness I don't want to acknowledge. I can feel him. Even before I see him, before I turn my head and confirm what I already know, I feel him. Close. Too close. My husband's voice breaks through the noise, his hand pressing lightly against my back, warm, steady, familiar. I have to go, he says, quiet, apologetic, though we both know I won't argue. Work always comes first. He kisses my cheek, nothing more than a brief press of lips, barely there, already distracted by his phone as he steps away. And then he's gone. And just like that, I'm alone. Not really. Not technically. The house is still full of people. But it doesn't feel that way. Not when I feel the shift before I even turn around. Not when my body reacts before my mind can catch up. He's there just as I knew he would be, watching me with that same knowing look, that same quiet confidence that unsettles something deep in my chest. Abandoned already? Javier's voice is light, teasing, but there's something behind it, something heavier. I force a small smile, shaking my head. Work emergency. He hums in acknowledgement, but his eyes don't leave mine. Convenient. The word hangs between us, weighted with something unspoken, something I don't have the strength to deny anymore. I should leave. I should walk away, blend back into the crowd, put as much distance between us as possible. But I don't. Instead, I let him step closer. The room feels smaller, the air heavier, my breath shallower than it should be. He tilts his head slightly, studying me like he's trying to read between the lines of something I haven't said yet. You're nervous, he murmurs, and I hate that he's right. I straighten my shoulders, force out a quiet laugh. I'm fine. He doesn't believe me. I see it in the way his gaze lingers, in the way his fingers twitch at his side like he's resisting the urge to touch me. Then he moves. A subtle shift, just enough for his hand to brush against my wrist, light, fleeting, but deliberate. I exhale sharply, my heartbeat stuttering, and before I can stop myself, I step back. Not far. Just enough. His expression doesn't change, but something flickers in his eyes. Amusement. Frustration. Understanding. Come with me. It's not a question. It's not even a request. Something else entirely, something I should say no to. But I don't. I follow him. The door closes behind us, shutting out the noise, sealing us into something that suddenly feels dangerous. The silence stretches, thick, charged, neither of us speaking. Then finally he does. If you tell me you feel nothing, he says quietly, I'll walk away. I open my mouth. Nothing comes out. He steps closer, slow, measured, giving me time to stop him. I don't. And then he kisses me. And I don't pull away. I tell myself it was a mistake, that it was nothing more than a lapse in judgment, that it didn't mean anything, that it won't happen again. I repeat it like a mantra over and over until the words start to lose their meaning, until I almost believe them. But my body knows better. My mind knows better. Every time I close my eyes, I feel the warmth of his breath, the weight of his hands, the way my pulse had betrayed me the second his lips touched mine. It was wrong. It was reckless. And yet the worst part isn't the guilt. The worst part is that I don't regret it. Not the way I should. I avoid him. I have to. It's the only way to keep this from spiraling further out of control. I don't answer his messages. I don't let my gaze linger too long when I scroll past his name. I keep my routine painfully normal. Work, errands, dinners with my husband, all the things that are supposed to ground me, to remind me of who I am. I convince myself it's working, that I'm fixing this, that if I put enough distance between us, whatever this is will fade into nothing. But then he finds me. It's not an accident. Not a coincidence. It's deliberate, calculated, the way he waits for me outside the cafe near my office, leaning casually against his car like he has every right to be there. My breath catches the moment I see him, my heart stuttering before I force myself to look away, to walk faster, to pretend I don't notice him standing there. But he doesn't let me slip away so easily. Avoiding me? His voice is smooth, amused, like he finds my resistance entertaining. I don't stop walking. I don't have time for this, I mutter, but even as I say it, I hear how unconvincing it sounds. He steps in front of me just enough to make me pause, just enough that I can't ignore him. Laura, he says quietly, and my name in his voice does something awful to me. I keep my gaze fixed on something, anything but him. This isn't happening, I say firmly, forcing steel into my voice, forcing control back into my hands. His expression flickers. Annoyance, amusement, something else, but he doesn't argue. He doesn't need to. We both know the truth. At home I try to act normal, but my husband notices. He never used to, never paid attention to the subtle shifts in my mood, but something in me must be cracking, because for the first time in years he looks at me, really looks at me. Are you okay? He asks one night over dinner, his fork pausing midway to his plate, his brow furrowed like he's trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't realized was there. My stomach twists. I force a smile. Of course, I lie too quickly, too easily. He doesn't push, doesn't press for more, but his gaze lingers, searching, uncertain. And that uncertainty terrifies me. The next family dinner is unbearable. The room feels smaller, hotter, suffocating, the weight of too many eyes, too many voices, too many ways to slip up. I sit next to my husband, my fingers wrapped tightly around my wine glass, pretending I'm engaged in the conversation, pretending I don't notice him across the table, pretending I don't feel the burn of his gaze every time I move. Javier is calm, controlled, too controlled, as if he's enjoying the game more than he should. He doesn't say anything inappropriate, doesn't do anything obvious, but I feel him. The slight shifts in his posture, the way his fingers tap lightly against the table, the way his gaze lingers just long enough to make my pulse stutter. Then suddenly I know someone is watching. Not him. Someone else. The realization creeps over me like ice, prickling at the back of my neck, sending a slow, sickening dread curling in my stomach. I don't know who. I don't know what they saw. But I know one thing for certain. This is no longer just between us. It starts with small moments, stolen minutes that stretch longer than they should, a meeting that wasn't supposed to happen but does anyway. A quick conversation turns into a lingering silence. A glance across the room turns into an excuse to be alone. A drive home becomes a detour to somewhere no one will see. We don't plan it, not really, but we stop pretending it's an accident. The first time it's in my car, parked in an empty lot behind a closed cafe, the rain tapping lightly against the windshield, the air between us thick and suffocating. Neither of us moves at first. Neither of us speaks. I grip the steering wheel like it's an anchor, like it's the only thing keeping me from unraveling completely. Then he reaches out, slow, deliberate, fingertips barely brushing over my wrist, and my breath catches. Say the word. He murmurs, and I know what he means, know that he's offering me a way out. But I don't take it. The next time it's an alleyway behind a restaurant, shadows stretching long against the brick, his hands on either side of me, trapping me in a space I don't want to escape. My pulse pounds in my ears as he leans in, close enough that his breath ghosts over my skin. No one will find us here, he says, voice low, steady, but there's something almost teasing in it, something that makes my stomach tighten. I should care about being seen, should care about how reckless this is, but the moment his fingers brush against my hip, everything else fades. The more we meet, the harder it gets to pretend I'm still in control. Every encounter is a little bolder, a little riskier, like we're daring fate to catch up with us. I stop checking my phone when I'm with my husband, afraid that even looking at it will give me away. I start double-checking my reflection before I walk through the front door, making sure there's no trace of him left on my skin. I tell myself that I can stop whenever I want, that I still have a choice, that I'm not trapped. but deep down I know I'm lying. Then one night as we sit in his car, the city lights flickering through the windshield, he asks the question I've been avoiding. Are you happy with him? The words are soft, careful, but they land like a punch to the gut. I stare ahead, my fingers curling into the fabric of my dress, my throat tightening. I should say yes. I should lie. I should fight. But I don't. The silence between us stretches too long, becomes its own answer, one that neither of us wants to acknowledge. He exhales, leans back against the seat, his jaw tightening. That's what I thought. I close my eyes, let the weight of it press into me, let it settle deep into my bones. My life is coming apart at the seams, slipping through my fingers faster than I can hold it together. But the truth is, I don't want to stop. I don't know if I even can. The moment I step into the room, I know there's no turning back. The door clicks shut behind me, sealing us inside a space where nothing else exists, where the weight of every mistake, every risk, every unspoken thought evaporates into the air. The lights are dim, the air thick with something unnameable, something electric, something dangerous. He watches me, standing a few steps away, his hands loose at his sides, his breathing steady but deep, like he's giving me a chance to stop this before it goes too far. I don't move. I don't speak. My pulse is a hammer in my chest, but it's not fear that makes my skin prickle. What? It's the slow, consuming realization that I have never felt more awake, more alive, more myself than I do in this moment. I don't remember who moves first. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's me. Maybe it doesn't matter. 1 second we're standing apart, the next his hands are on my waist, my fingers are in his hair, and the world tilts sideways, unraveling everything I thought I knew about control. The walls feel too small, the air too hot, every breath a battle between hesitation and hunger. His touch isn't tentative. It isn't hesitant. It's certain, sure, like he already knew I'd be here. I don't fight it. I don't want to fight it. I let it happen. I let it consume me. When morning comes, the weight of what I've done should crush me. I should feel guilt, shame, panic. But instead I feel light. Like a part of me that had been locked away for years has finally broken free. I stare at the ceiling, listening to the slow rhythm of his breathing beside me, my skin still buzzing with the remnants of something I don't know how to name. My life outside these walls feels distant, like it belongs to someone else, a different version of me, a woman I don't recognize anymore. But the real world doesn't wait. By the time I step back into my life, reality slams into me like a freight train. The air is different, thicker, heavier, like my own home has turned against me. I move through the day like I'm walking on a tightrope, every step careful, every glance over my shoulder filled with paranoia. My husband doesn't notice. He kisses my cheek, tells me about his morning, never once looks at me close enough to see the truth. But someone else does. Sophia watches me. Not in passing, not casually, but with a sharpness that makes my stomach twist. We're sitting outside, coffee cooling in front of us, the sun too bright, the world too loud. She leans forward, her voice lower than before. You're acting strange, she says, the words edged with something almost cautious. Is everything okay? My fingers tighten around my cup. I force a small laugh, shaking my head, dismissing the weight behind her question. I'm fine. But I'm not. He knows it. I know it. The way she studies me makes my breath come faster. She's too perceptive, too intuitive, too close. She keeps looking at me like that. If she keeps asking questions, if she pushes just a little harder, she'll know. And if she knows, it's only a matter of time before everyone does. The moment I see it, my blood turns cold. A single envelope, unmarked, ordinary, sitting on the kitchen counter like it belongs there, like it hasn't just set fire to my entire existence. My hands shake as I pick it up, my breath caught somewhere in my throat, my stomach twisting into something sharp and unbearable. I know before I even open it. I know. The paper inside is crisp, smooth beneath my fingertips, but the weight of it is suffocating. Then I see it. The photograph. Me. Him. It's not graphic, not explicit, but it doesn't have to be. The image is enough. The way his hand is on my back, too low, too familiar. The way my body leans into his, betraying every denial, every excuse, every lie I've told myself. The angle is precise, deliberate, captured with the intention of destroying me. My pulse pounds in my ears as I flip the paper over, my breath hitching at the words scribbled in thick, bold ink. I know. That's it. No name. No warning. Just those 2 words. My entire body goes numb. The air around me feels too thin, the walls pressing in, the sound of my own heartbeat drowning out every rational thought. Someone saw. Someone knows. And now they want me to know that they know. I force in a shallow breath, my mind scrambling, spinning. Who? How long? What do they want? The questions claw at my skull, but there's no time for answers because I hear the front door open, hear the familiar sound of my husband's keys dropping onto the table. I shove the envelope into the nearest drawer, my hands barely working, my pulse hammering, my body betraying me. I turn just as he steps into the kitchen, my face schooled into something neutral, something not guilty, something that doesn't give me away. But then his eyes meet mine and I know. He knows something. Not everything. Not yet. But something is off, something isn't adding up, something in me isn't right, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, he's looking at me like he actually sees me. His brow furrows, his expression unreadable, his voice careful but sharp. Where were you tonight? The words slam into me like a wrecking ball, tearing through every lie I've built, every careful piece of this crumbling facade. My throat goes dry, my fingers curl into fists at my sides, my body screaming for me to run, to fight, to deny, but the photograph is still there, burning behind my eyelids, the inked words echoing in my skull. I open my mouth. I hesitate. And in that hesitation I feel everything collapse. The silence is worse than shouting, worse than accusations, worse than anything I could have prepared for. He stands there, still, unblinking, his hands resting on the counter, his knuckles white from the force of his grip. The photograph is between us, crumpled now, edges bent where my fingers had clenched too tightly, but the image is still there, undeniable, the proof of everything I never wanted him to see. My chest is tight, my breath shallow, my entire body frozen under the weight of his gaze. He hasn't said a word. He doesn't have to. The truth is already carved into the space between us, thick and inescapable. I open my mouth, try to explain, but the words don't come. What could I possibly say? That it wasn't real? That it was a mistake? That I didn't mean for any of it to happen? None of it would matter. None of it would undo what's already been done. His jaw tightens, his eyes dark and sharp, his expression unreadable except for the single unmistakable fact that something between us has shattered beyond repair. My stomach twists violently, the weight of my own guilt pressing down, suffocating, crushing. I take a step forward, instinctively reaching for him, but he doesn't move, doesn't react, doesn't even flinch. He's already gone. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally, mentally, he's no longer here, no longer mine. A deep, sickening ache unfurls in my chest, an emptiness I hadn't anticipated, hadn't been prepared for. I thought I understood what losing him would feel like. I didn't. It's worse. So much worse. And then he exhales, long and slow, the sound so quiet it's almost lost in the hum of the refrigerator, in the faint creak of the house settling around us. When he finally speaks, his voice is low, even too controlled. How long? The question knocks the air from my lungs, sharp and precise, a blade cutting through the last remnants of my composure. I shake my head, my throat tightening because I don't know how to answer. I don't know if he means the affair itself or the moment I stopped loving him or the second I let myself become this person, the one standing in front of him now, a stranger in my own skin. I try again, force out the only thing I can think to say. Marcos, I. His hand lifts just slightly, cutting me off before I can continue. Don't. One word. Final. A command, not a plea. He doesn't want my excuses. He doesn't want anything from me anymore. I swallow hard, my body numb, my mind screaming for me to fix this, to do something, but it's too late. He walks past me, his shoulder brushing mine as he moves, his scent, his presence, everything I once took for granted slipping through my fingers like sand. He doesn't look back. He doesn't slam the door. He doesn't yell. He just leaves. And that's somehow worse. I stand there for what feels like hours, staring at nothing, my hands trembling, my heart hammering against my ribs, my body waiting for a reaction that doesn't come. The reality of it creeps in slow, suffocating, irreversible. I've lost him. My marriage. My life. Everything. I reach for my phone before I even think about it, my fingers moving on autopilot, my chest tightening as I scroll, searching, needing something to anchor me. But when I find Javier's name, when I press call, when I listen to the endless ringing that stretches on and on, there's no answer. I try again. Nothing. Panic rises in my throat, thick and suffocating. I open our messages, my heart pounding, scanning through the words we've exchanged, the reckless moments, the things we said that shouldn't have been said. Then I see it. The last message was mine. Hours ago. Before everything collapsed. He never responded. I type out another. Where are you? Read. No reply. A chill runs down my spine, my hands tightening around my phone, my stomach twisting into something cold and hollow. He's gone. No warning. No explanation. Just gone. I feel something in my chest splinter, a slow, aching crack that spreads deeper with every passing second. I thought this was real. Thought he was different. I thought after everything he would at least be here. But the truth is staring me in the face now, sharp and brutal. He was never mine to begin with. And now I have nothing. The silence in the house is unbearable, thick and heavy, pressing in on me from every direction. The walls feel too close, the air too thin, every room an echo of something I can't get back. Marcos is gone. His presence erased in a matter of hours, his side of the closet empty, his toothbrush missing from the holder, his scent fading from the sheets. There was no fight, no last attempt to salvage what had already been reduced to dust. He left without slamming doors, without accusations, without giving me the closure I didn't deserve. And that's the worst part. He didn't even need to say it out loud. I wasn't worth fighting for. The weight of it sinks in slowly, stretching across my chest like an iron band, making every breath feel heavier than the last. My phone stays silent. No missed calls. No unread messages. Nothing from Marcos. Nothing from Javier. I tell myself I should be relieved, that maybe it's better this way, that maybe disappearing is the kindest thing he could have done. But deep down I know the truth. He was never meant to stay. He never promised me forever. That was the lie I told myself. That was the fantasy I built in my head, the one that let me believe I wasn't throwing my life away for nothing. But it was nothing. And now I have to live with it. Days blur into each other. I stop checking my phone. Stop looking for signs of the life I used to have. I go through the motions, wake up, drink coffee, sit in silence, pretend I know what to do next. But I don't. I've spent so long caught between two worlds, balancing on the edge of something dangerous, convincing myself I had control. And now that both of them are gone, I'm left standing in the wreckage alone. Then it happens. A week later. Maybe more. I don't know anymore. Time has lost meaning. I'm walking through a crowded street, lost in thought, my mind numb from too many hours spent staring at nothing. And then I feel it. That pull. That quiet, undeniable weight of being watched. My body knows before my mind does. I stop. I turn. And there he is. Javier stands across the street, half in shadow, hands in his pockets, his face unreadable, his posture relaxed in that effortless way that used to pull me in. My breath catches, my chest tightens, the space between us filled with something that used to mean everything. He doesn't move. He doesn't wave. He doesn't try to close the distance. He just watches. For a split second I wonder if he'll say something. If he'll give me a reason, an explanation, anything to make sense of the way he disappeared. But he doesn't. And for the first time I don't need him to. As I already understand. We stare at each other for what feels like an eternity, neither of us speaking, neither of us daring to break whatever this moment is. But it isn't longing. It isn't regret. It's just the end. A quiet, inevitable conclusion to a story that was never meant to last. I blink. And when I open my eyes again, he's gone.